The president has called Medicaid, Medicare, and child care little scams and said, quote, "We're fighting wars. We cannot take care of daycare." I'm just trying to understand that. Is it your position, since you're asking taxpayers for another $500 billion for the war, that American families should be forced to give up child care and health coverage so that you can have $1.5 trillion for this budget?
From child care, from health insurance, or from both? May 12, 2026, U.S. inflation has surged to 3.8%. Gasoline is $4.51 per liter. 13 American soldiers have lost their lives, and the Department of Defense is coming to Congress asking for $0.5 trillion. Senator Patty Murray asked a single question in response to that number. Not abstract, not theoretical, concrete, direct, and the kind that utterly dismantles Hegseth with all his defense mechanisms. This is the historically highest defense budget, and you can't do everything at once under budget constraints. So my question is, do you want American families to give up child care and health insurance? Is this your position? Hegseth was cornered. He tried to escape, and Murray didn't let him finish. This hearing was about so much more than a budget debate. This was the voice of American families seeking the answer to the question of whose lives matter, with bomb costs on one side and daycare expenses on the other. Background: 2 bombshells in one day. On the morning of May 12, 2026, Hegseth entered back-to-back hearings. In the morning, the House Appropriations Committee. In the afternoon, the Senate Appropriations Committee. And anyone looking at the backdrop of those 2 hearings could see how heavy the numbers were. Murray's questioning line fell right in the middle of the inflation data announced the same day. U.S. inflation rose to 3.8%. This was the reflection of months of the Iran war and the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz on American families' wallets. And within this context, Hegseth was demanding a historic record from Congress, $0.5 trillion. Throughout the trial, Murray emphasized the following points. The Iran war imposed a significant burden on both the lives of soldiers and the pockets of taxpayers. The cost of the war was suspiciously lowballed. The damage to U.S. bases in the Middle East was not included in that estimate. In this context, Murray included a quote directly from Trump himself, and this quote completely changed the course of the trial. "Daycare is a scam," Trump's own words. The strength of Murray's questioning came from confronting Hegseth with Trump's own words instead of making an abstract criticism. Murray said the president called Medicaid, Medicare, and child care little scams, and said, "We're at war. We can't look after daycare centers because we're at war." Murray said the president called Medicaid, Medicare, and child care little scams, and said, "We can't look after daycare centers because we're at war."
Stop. 1 minute. The President of the United States is saying publicly the nursery is a scam and we are at war, so there is no money for daycare. This was the pillar of the framework Murray had established, because now the question was, what does this budget prioritize? $1.5 trillion is being set aside for war. At the same time, calling daycare programs a scam raises a serious contradiction about the legitimacy of these policies. As Patty Murray directly asked Peter Hegseth, do American families have to give up daycare and health insurance for this $1.5 trillion budget to be funded? This question, stated under oath, created the sharpest dilemma on record. Saying yes means accepting that families should give up daycare and health insurance. Saying no means claiming that the budget does not incur this cost, and neither can be verified. "This is not my department," Hegseth's escape reflex. How did Hegseth respond to this question? Hegseth replied, "Senator, this is not my department." Hegseth responded, "Senator, this is not my department." "This is not my department." These 4 words instantly created a silence in the courtroom, and then Murray dismantled this answer in a single move. Murray immediately replied, "This is exactly what I wanted to say. You want $1.5 trillion and you have no idea where this money will come from. There are budget constraints. This $1.5 trillion has to be cut from somewhere. The logic was quite clear. Since the federal budget is a zero-sum structure, a $1.5 trillion increase means cuts in other areas, and the Trump administration's targeting of areas like Medicaid, childcare, and various health programs opened up a discussion about the societal impact of these choices. The response, "This is not my department," does not change the mathematical reality of this budget. It merely indicates a desire to stay out of the responsibility debate. If a Secretary of Defense is asking for $1.5 trillion from the federal budget, he has to know where that money is going to create a hole. The answer, "I don't know, ask someone else," means shirking this responsibility.
"I'm meeting with every family in Dover," Hegseth's harsh outburst. The moment Hegseth really lost it came when Murray continued speaking. Murray continued, "And finally, Mr. Secretary, your budget request goes beyond Trump's rhetoric and reveals the truth. I think you and the president value families as much as you value defense contractors. You want to increase the war budget." Hegseth interrupted here. Hegseth shouted, "I meet with every family in Dover, okay? Don't tell us we don't care about families. We definitely care and support them in every possible way." This sentence is the very core of Hegseth's defense mechanism. A defense minister who claims to have attended the funerals of martyrs is trying to deflect the inquiry with a show of empathy. But Murray didn't back down from this move. On the contrary, he pressed on. Murray replied in a calm but firm tone, "Mr. Minister, don't interrupt me. I'm asking you about taxpayers' money. When we went to war before, we asked people to contribute. We added victory gardens. They paid more. You are not doing that. You want $500 billion, and that means something else has to be sacrificed. The committee is looking into this." This response was the turning point of the trial. Murray set aside Hegseth's emotional defense and framed the question historically. The American people have always made sacrifices during wartime. This time, the same sacrifice is not being made. Instead, the programs for the poor are being cut. Historical lesson: whose sacrifice during the war era? Murray's reference to victory gardens actually carried a profoundly deep historical analysis. During World War II, the American government asked citizens for concrete sacrifices. The use of chimney smoke was restricted. Meat, sugar, and fuel were subject to a rationing system. People set up victory gardens in their backyards to grow their own vegetables, and the wealthy were included in this burden too. In 1944, the highest income tax rate reached 94%. The cost of the war was shared by the entire society, but it was especially loaded onto the rich. Murray's question was, why is it the exact opposite now? The costs of war are going up, but the burden is being shifted to areas like daycare programs, Medicaid, and children's health financing. Meanwhile, defense contractors are getting record contracts. Big oil companies are profiting from the Hormuz blockade. And when the tax burden on the upper income group is added to the picture, Patty Murray criticized the budget request by saying, "Your budget request shows the reality beyond Trump's rhetoric. You and the president do not give families the value you give to defense contractors." This accusation is not a personal attack, a mathematical result derived from the budget figures. 13 American soldiers, dozens of billions of dollars, zero accountability. The emotional weight of Murray's questioning came not just from the numbers, but from the reference to the human cost. Murray began, "Mr. Secretary, the war in Iraq didn't just cost the lives of 13 American soldiers. It has also come at a heavy cost to the taxpayer. The money that could have gone to health care for families is now going to bombs, and a war that the vast majority of the American people are against." The statement, "Instead of healthcare services, these resources are going to bombs," highlighted how the $5 billion could be allocated to concrete social outcomes like childcare, health insurance, or food security. Patty Murray's criticism was that these costs were not discussed in detail during the hearing, and Murray focused on framing the issue as defeatists denying the reality of the threat. Murray also emphasized that the war cost calculations were incomplete, particularly noting that the damage to U.S. bases in the Middle East was not included in the official estimates. This point had also come up in previous hearings. It was said to be $25 billion, but excluding base damages, excluding equipment renewal costs, excluding the impact of fuel prices on the economy, excluding the healthcare costs of veterans. The real bill is all of this, and this real bill was not being presented to Congress.
Kuhn's question, tactical victory, strategic loss, Murray's approach aligned with a framework that Democratic Senator Chris Coons advanced the same day. Coons said, "My concern is this. You have a series of tactical wins, but you are on the verge of a strategic loss, because now we're negotiating," and Hegseth cut Coons off. This transaction clarifies the place of Murray's question in the big picture. "What are families sacrificing?" Murray asked. Coons then asked, what was gained in return for these sacrifices? When the two questions are considered together, the true magnitude of the trial emerges. Families are waiving daycare. They are foregoing health insurance, struggling with inflation. He is struggling with gasoline prices. And the result of all this? The strait is still closed, the regime is still standing, the nuclear threat is still debatable. The phrase exceeds Trump's rhetoric stands out in this assessment, representing the point Patty Murray makes in her budget analysis in a single sentence. Murray emphasized that the budget request goes beyond political rhetoric to reveal true priorities, and that the administration does not assign the same importance to families as it does to defense contractors. This sentence contains a three-layered analysis. First, it goes beyond Trump's rhetoric. So, whatever the rhetoric, the numbers tell the truth. They say, we love families, but the budget items show otherwise. Secondly, it brings the truth to light. The budget is the most honest reflection of priorities. It's not how much you talk, but what you spend money on that matters. Thirdly, you value defense contractors. This is not an abstract accusation. The names of the companies that received record defense contracts are known. Lobbying expenses are on the record, and in this table, the relationship between the declaration of daycare programs as small fraud and the share these contractors receive from the budget is very clear. Conclusion: the question beyond $1.5 trillion. The picture that emerged from this trial revealed something far beyond the numbers. America has had to ask the question of how sacrifice is shared in every wartime. In World War II, the burden was shared. It was divided in Korea. It was divided in Vietnam. But there was always one question: who is paying for what? Murray's question was the contemporary version of that date. The committee is looking at the budget, and what they see is that when you ask for $5 trillion, something else has to be sacrificed. What is that thing? What is this thing? Hegseth said, "I greet the families in Dover," but Murray's question wasn't about attending the funeral. It was about whether families currently alive should forego their children's daycare to pay the price of the bomb. And Hegseth didn't give a real answer to that question. "This is not my department," he said. He cut Murray off and angrily said, "I care about families." But caring is not the same as prioritizing. The budget priorities show, and these figures cannot be blamed for what they say. If you want to follow this type of analysis, subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications. See you at the next hearing. See you at the next hearing.